What skills should you always have in a loud build? Now, obviously every build is different, as is every player. You may consider some skills absolutely necessary that others may have never even used. However, there are consistently a few skills that most players can agree you should always, or almost always, have in a loud build. Keep in mind, this video is assuming that you're level 100, although I won't assume you have any infamy as it doesn't really matter in this case. This video also isn't aimed at any specific difficulty, just all the difficulties in general. The exception being, I'll have a few mentions of skills that aren't per se required on most difficulties, but become so on one down. Now, I've split these skills up into two categories. Always have, for skills that, in my opinion, are absolutely mandatory for any loud build, and strongly recommended for skills that I personally would always use, but you may disagree or just can't spare the points. So let's get started. First up for skills you should always have is Resilience Aced. The basic version of this skill is a minor increase to armor recovery rate, but the aced version is what counts, reducing flashbang duration by a staggering 75%. Flashbangs are undeniably a frustrating mechanic in Payday 2, and this is the only skill in the game that can help curb their effect. Being blinded for several seconds can result in dying to cloakers, dozers, or snipers you couldn't have possibly known were there. For a mere 4 points you can prevent this, and you absolutely should. Next up, you should always get basic duck and cover. Without this skill, sprinting feels like you're stuck in a bog. You won't get very far, and you have to take frequent breaks to restore your stamina. With this skill, sprinting becomes much better overall, giving a 25% boost to your sprinting speed, stamina, and stamina recovery rate. At the cost of a single skill point, I can't see any reason not to get this skill. Now, this next one is specifically for dodge players, i.e. you're wearing a suit and choose to avoid damage instead of bulking it. If you're running dodge, you should always get duck and cover aced. An extra 10% chance to dodge while sprinting is key to any good dodge build. The 15% chance to dodge while ziplining is just a nice addition. Back to general builds. In that same tree, grab basic parkour. The ladder climb speed isn't too much to worry about, but being 10% faster in general at all times for just 2 points is obviously a wise investment. Finally, for skills I would consider absolutely mandatory, we'll touch on one down briefly. Every single one down build should always have 9 lives aced. As the name implies, on one down you can only die a single time before being black and white, and needing a visit with a doctor bag. With this skill, that's doubled to 2 times. Now you're only losing out on a single down compared to lower difficulties. This not only will make your medical supplies last much longer, but now if you get downed, you actually have a chance to get back to that doctor bag. It's not uncommon to be revived and instantly die again, going into custody without any control. 9 lives aced will help along your one down runs better than any other skill. Okay, so let's move on to skills that aren't exactly mandatory, but I would argue you should prioritize taking in your builds. Up first being just any form of health regeneration. This can come as either Hostage Taker Aced, which will give you passive HP regeneration provided you have a hostage or joker, first aid kits which are 14 bursts of full HP, or from a perk deck such as Muscle, Infiltrator, Ex-Presidents, etc. etc. Health regeneration is key to survival on higher difficulties, and cutting down on medic bag waste. Pretty much every build that has room for it should take a form of healing. Next is any ace deployable, just something to bring to the table. Whether it be ammo bags, medic bags, first aid kits, trip mines, sentries, etc. Be sure to bring a fully upgraded or as close as possible deployable. If you bring a single unupgraded doctor bag to a heist, your teammates aren't going to be very thankful, so try your best to be a good fellow heister and bring some supplies. Now let's move on to more specific builds. I mentioned dodge builds earlier, let me go more into detail. Generally speaking, loud builds are split into 2 categories, armor or dodge. There are mixes and outliers, but most of the time you're either trying to tank all the damage you can or avoid it. So, when you're in an armor build, you should pretty much always have Iron Man aced. A 30% boost to your armor is inherently great, but obviously the higher the base stat of your armor, the more that 30% will matter. So, why not bring the tankiest armor in the game, the improved combined tactical vest? You'll be thankful for all that extra armor, and the reduced movement speed will be pretty much negated if you're bringing duck and cover and parkour, as well as this next skill. If you're in an armor build, you should probably get Transporter aced. The more armor you have, the faster you'll move while carrying loot. Obviously your speed can't go over your base speed, but when trying to move that engine or toast, you'll be very thankful you grabbed aced Transporter. The basic version is also pretty handy, allowing you to throw bags further and higher. Moving on to dodge builds. If you're playing dodge, you should probably get Sneaky Bastard Basic. This skill will give you a higher dodge chance the lower your detection risk is. It's worth mentioning the aced version of the skill does not inherently give you more dodge than the base basic version, they both cap at a 10% bonus. All acing this skill does is make the requirements easier. With basic Sneaky Bastard, to get the maximum bonus you have to keep your detection risk at 5 or lower. Acing this skill will change that requirement to 25 or lower. Either way, the most dodge chance you can get out of this skill is 10%. That may not sound like a lot, but provided you can make some viable weapons with high concealment, this passive bonus is critical. With the Rogue perk deck and Ace Duck and Cover for instance, your passive dodge chance will sit at 55. More than half the bullets coming at you will just not hit you at all. Assuming you're getting Sneaky Bastard, you should also get 2 extra skills, the first being Basic Inner Pockets. This should be fairly self-explanatory, giving you a bonus 2 concealment for doing literally nothing. It's worth noting that even for melee weapons that are already at the maximum base concealment, being 30, this skill will still increase their concealment further to 32. And secondly, if you're getting Sneaky Bastard, you should probably get Low Blow. This skill has the same mechanics as Sneaky Bastard, but will instead give you a 30% chance to land critical shots for most weapons. Since you're making concealed weapons to meet the requirements of Sneaky Bastard and Low Blow, crits will give you an edge by increasing your damage output substantially. Finally, for dodge skills, you should probably get Bullseye Basic. This skill will let you regen 5 armor when you get a headshot with a 2-second cooldown. You may be wondering, why only basic? Well, in dodge builds you usually only have 20 armor. In Payday, if you have any armor, damage dealt to you can't hurt you more than the armor you have left, except for snipers who bypass this. Here's an example. Let's say you get a headshot while at 0 armor. You're now at 5 armor. Now you get hit with a shot that deals 60 damage. You will take 5 damage, at which point your armor will break, and then the rest of the damage will be ignored. The aced version of this skill would heal you to full armor at 20, but taking 60 damage would still drain your armor to 0 and negate the damage again, having the exact same effect as just having 5 armor. So the basic version of the skill is all you need for most dodge builds. However, if you're running the Anarchist perk deck, which will restore armor every time you do damage, it would now be a good idea to ace Bullseye. This is because ideally in an armor build, you don't want your armor to break. So in this case, you'll want to ace the skill to restore as much armor as possible per shot. Ideally, as long as you keep doing damage and getting headshots with Anarchist, you'll be restoring your armor faster than it can break. In dodge, since your armor is capped at 20, this is not the case. And finally, for heavily recommended but not per se necessary skills, if you're playing 1 down, you should probably get aced Swan Song. This is an absurdly powerful skill. Whenever you're shot to death by enemies, you'll have 9 seconds of invincibility and infinite ammo, allowing you to clear rooms and or get yourself to safety so your team can revive you. On 1 down, you're going to be downed a lot, so make those downs count and kill as much as you can with very little risk to yourself. And that's it. There are plenty of skills in the game that are very good that weren't mentioned here, but these are the skills that you should always, or at least almost always have. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.